Some officials' minds here at the White House is, will those Democrats be the ones actually leading negotiations moving ahead? Arthel?
Ellis and Barber, thank you very much. Eric?
Well, for more on what could happen in 3 weeks, let's bring in Dan Palmer, former advisor to the Ted Cruz presidential campaign, and Democratic strategist Dave Brown. Dan, let me start with you. The $64 question, or I guess $5.7 billion question right now, will any Democrat on the bipartisan conference committee, would any Democrat support funding for some fencing or the barrier, which the president has always been calling for?
Well, I think they'd be wise to, because the alternative doesn't play out well for them. The president will declare a national emergency. He's framed the issue correctly as one of national security and the humanitarian crisis on the border. And if the Democrats want to tie up some executive action in the courts, then there can be no comprehensive immigration reform so long as the wall isn't resolved. And without that, the dreamers are high and dry and they're stuck in limbo. That's a constituency that is very important to the Democrats, and the structural pressure will be on them, not on the Republicans, to resolve it. So if it ends up going that way, I would look for Chuck and Nancy to make the proposal to Trump to try to break the logjam. They won't be happy if it's tied up in the courts.
Yeah, David, do you think that Chuck and Nancy and others will support building some type of barrier?
Well, you just threw a graphic up that shows that a majority of the American people don't support building a wall. They do support funding for more border agents, but they don't support building the wall. And in fact, the same poll, your Fox News poll that came out earlier this week, also shows that most Americans, a majority, don't support the way the president is handling immigration writ large. So I think politically, no. And in fact, if anything, if you even want to use the midterms as a referendum on the president's handling of border security, America spoke loud and clear, and they don't want this approach. But I do think it's very telling, listening to the president's comments earlier today in the Rose Garden. I mean, he's clearly opening the door for some dialogue about what a comprehensive border security package might look like, and whether that's funding for a smart wall, funding for technology, such as what Republican Congressman Will Hurd, whose district sits along the border, has called for, or some combination thereof. So I think politically, what you'll see with this conference committee, both sides trying to find a way to move forward in a way where there's a package that can actually pass out of both the House and the Senate.
And in terms of that package, yesterday in the Rose Garden, we've seen the president evolve. He went from $5.7 billion down, then he vetoed that one back up. But now he's talking about this fence. And I ask people about this a lot. In 2006, the Secure America Act, the Democrats voted for 654 miles of walls. Here's the OMB request for what the president wants. He only wants 234 miles. The president wants less than 1/3 of a steel barrier. Now, why won't Democrats, David, in good faith and goodwill, support 1/3 of what they voted for in 2006, which is not a wall, but this type of steel barrier in Yuma, Rio Grande, and Laredo, where the experts say it is most desperately needed?
Yeah, look, I appreciate the question. It's a fair question, and let's see what comes out of the conference committee. But I want to offer a little context here, because I actually think this has been the hardest part of this debate. The challenge with discussion about the wall and the way the president has historically talked about the wall, it's not just a wall. When he says wall, it's a battle cry for a much larger sort of symbolic political statement about not only a physical barrier, but also an appeal to his base on immigration writ large. And I think it's fair to say, if you look at the proposals this administration has offered, they're not only interested in narrowing the scope of asylum seekers, but also they want to reform legal immigration in a way that would really scale back dramatically the number of people who can come legally to this country. So that's the challenge for Democrats politically, that we can't actually have. It's very difficult to separate a discussion about the wall from comprehensive immigration reform and border security, because the president has really left us no room to do that. So I do think it will be interesting to see if a path forward can come out of the conference committee where both sides can declare victory.
And Dan, what about that? Do you think that word wall is a dog whistle? And do you think that basically, as long as that word is in there, the Democrats are not going to go and vote for basically what they voted for in the past?
Eric, you asked a great question. You got an evasive answer. What's changed since 2006 is the Democratic Party. They've swerved so far left that they're putting the interests of non-citizens ahead of citizens. I disagree with Dave. I think that the issue is framed correctly. It's one of national security and the humanitarian crisis. Despite whatever rhetoric the Democrats want to roll out about a wall being ineffective or a third-century solution and we should rely on technology, if they have a front door, they've already conceded that a physical barrier is an important part of securing access to their own homes. We all understand the merit of a physical barrier. This is about virtue signaling on the left, and events are going to overtake them. As soon as we have more killings by illegals of United States citizens or more tragedies along the border, they can't sustain these arguments about technology and all these other soft improvements that they'd like to turn off as soon as President Trump leaves office. We need hard physical
Dan,
barriers, and I think the American public understands.
I'm sorry, Dan. That statement ignores the reality of policy and the policy debate for the past decade. I mean, I served in the Senate in 2013 when the Senate passed comprehensive immigration reform, and I'll tell you that Republicans, your side, definitely support technological enhancements. No one's saying that we should take everything off the table. But what I find really interesting and frankly disingenuous about your comments, let's look at where drugs.
Out of time.
Let's look at where drugs enter this country. It's through legal ports of entry. We absolutely need to be focused on where our major vulnerabilities are, and that, by definition, includes smart technology, more border agents.
That's the Democratic point of view. Dan, your last response.
This is why the president really has no option. Look, when you have a divided government, there's two tools. You can use persuasion to try to find the votes in the legislative process, or you can go to executive action. At this point, the Democrats have proven unworthy counterparties to any good faith negotiation. He's got to go to the courts. He's got to be preparing his briefs because he's going to get tied up in the Ninth Circuit. This thing's got to get resolved in the courts. Does he have the right to do it or not? We're going to find out.
We will, likely find out maybe in 3 weeks, unless the Democrats and the Republicans in the conference committees can have the same type of debate and come to some conclusion that we just had here on the Fox News channel. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.